Oh,
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Sorensen. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and the founder and therapist and a clinical supervisor at Psyche Soma Psychotherapy Group in Fullerton, California, and virtually. And this week we are highlighting all of our therapists, our wonderful team that we have of trauma-informed therapists. And today we have Jennifer Walker. She's one of our therapists and also another clinical supervisor in our practice. And we're happy to have you, Jen. We're excited to learn about your practice and who you love helping and supporting.
yeah,
Can you share a
glad to
little
be
bit
here.
with us?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am a clinical supervisor at Psyche and Soma, and I'm also a sex therapist. So that's primarily what my focus has been last few years. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you work with, in the realm of sex therapy, do you
Mm.
work with just adults? I'm curious if like those
Ye-
topics come up with teens or if you're
Yeah, for the
seeing
most
anything.
part, I've been mainly working with adults, usually individuals and, often couples as well. It's
So
pretty.
people don't necessarily have to be within in a relation, or the relationship doesn't have to show up in session.
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, sometimes, yeah, often an individual will come in because there's something going on. Either they're like worried about something related to sex or their sexuality, or they want to make sure this is normal. That kind of comes up a lot.
Mhm.
And they just kind of want a space to explore or to
Mhm.
understand themselves. Sometimes I think it can be helpful, like depending on what the issue is or what they're coming in for. Sometimes if they have a partner or partners, it might be helpful to include them at some point as well. It just kind of depends on what's kind of going on for that person. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, an individual can come in or a couple or, um, partners.
Okay. And what are some of the common concerns that you hear from people? I know you mentioned people wanting to kind of check in to see if something is normal or not. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
but what are some of the specific concerns that you help people with?
sometimes it has to do with like libido concerns or, like kind of like a mismatch, with them and their partners, whether it's like they would like more sex or they don't really have often like a desire for sex. And other times I think sometimes people want to kind of get into things like if they have like certain fantasies or things like that, they don't really know where to go with that potentially. Or I think there's a lot of like misinformation out there. A lot of like for example, I guess like with BDSM, like, there's like kind of like this like myth or something with it that like, oh, you must have been traumatized or something for you to like be into that or something like that. And I think it gets people to really um like think about their sexuality a lot, which causes a lot of distress. So
So
there can.
somehow it's like something, a desire or fantasy or a need or want is paired with like it's being paired with a taboo or it's seen as a taboo.
And they're trying to like reconcile that. Sometimes it may be something related to like their actions, their behaviors, what they're doing with their sexuality or whatever the case, whether it's like masturbation or watching porn or something like that. And trying to reconcile that with their own values,
Okay.
which can be complicated because sometimes our values are our values, and other times, like we kind of inherit values from like
Mhm.
our family system or like our community. So
Mhm.
it's like really kind of deciphering some of that and figuring out like what feels like most aligned for that person, and it can get really confusing because there's things that they're drawn to, but then there's like these like thoughts or beliefs that like maybe this is wrong or lot of like shame that can get involved that we have
It
to
sounds
kind
like
of.
there's trauma work even within that, just
Mhm,
assessing values and needs and how those can be conflicting sometimes,
mhm.
what
Yeah,
gets inherited.
yeah, definitely. I mean, and kind of having to sort through that because, um, I think a lot of the times it's our own like view of ourselves in regards to like sex or sexuality that's causing us like the most distress most of the time. Like, well, I don't want to say, some of the time. Other times there can be some physical aspects that are going on. Um, and I would have that person kind of check in with like a medical provider
Okay.
to kind of have some tests done and things like that, just depending on what the issue is that they're coming in for. But yeah.
When or if there is a medical reason that people are having some physical distress,
Mhm.
I guess, what am I wondering? How does that inform your practice? Like if there is a medical or biological cause versus
Um,
psychological, do you work with that differently?
yeah, I can, I guess, like just kind of broadly speaking, it would inform like, I guess, the interventions that we would do, and also um if there is a piece of it that's medical, then intervening like medically, like
Mhm.
whether it's like some kind of like like if the testosterone is low or something and they work on that, and get testosterone from their doctor, uh, then that's going to help with the interventions versus like if we don't address the medical component, like I can kind of make suggestions, but it might only go so far.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
you're aware of your limitations, what you're
mhm,
able to offer, or the
mhm.
impact that that could have.
Yeah, we want to like rule out like some of the medical stuff that is possible within that. Mhm,
Um,
yeah. Mhm.
So the physical, biological, and the psychological all affect someone's sexuality
Mhm, mhm.
or their
And
experience in their body.
yeah, and sometimes, and so it like really depends, like in the beginning, just depending on where the person's coming from or what they're worried about or their questions, it could be a lot of psychoeducation. Because like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there and
Mhm.
it confuses people. And so it gets them to think like, oh, well, I'm not doing that. So therefore something's wrong with me. And why isn't my body doing that? Or whatever the case. And that sometimes just giving somebody like education that they weren't able to
Mhm.
receive either early on or they were looking on maybe like things on Google that weren't that informative, I guess. That can be kind of a relief in and of itself sometimes.
Mhm.
So that's been really cool for me to be able to provide that in that way. Sometimes it's really just like knowledge that changes something for
Yeah.
somebody, which seems like, I don't know, crazy in a way, but like at the same time, like I'm glad to like be a part of that too,
Mhm.
and help that person like not have to feel so distressed about themselves once they learn like, no, this is okay, or this is like normal or typical or whatever you
Yeah.
want to say.
And when people Google things, anything, not even sex related, there's
Yeah.
a lot of misinformation. There's also so much information.
Oh yeah. Or
People.
like Reddit threads, like just, I mean, again, like those things can be really helpful.
Mhm.
Sometimes people find a lot of support. So I'm not
Mhm.
like trying to like say it's all terrible or anything like
Yeah.
that. But you don't know where this information, you just there's so much information, like you said, you just don't know where it's all coming from or yeah. So it can kind of be really confusing,
Mhm.
especially if you're like in a lot of distress about something and then you see something that is very negative or scary and like you
Mhm.
can latch onto that and it can be really it can impact like how you're feeling even more.
Just adds fuel to the fire.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'd imagine um, building trust and a sense of safety with your clients is also a big component of that. Like you could be anyone giving some psychoeducation and some information, but the connection that you have with your clients as well, I
Hmm.
imagine that's a really important part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in the beginning it's important to get the person's permission to like even talk about these things. I mean, a lot of the times they're coming to see me, so like that's what they want to address. But I mean, also like if depending on how they've grown up, or like I said, their community, different things, they might not even know what's okay to talk about or what's okay to say, like certain words, like so a lot of it is like just giving permission for somebody to talk about things that maybe they didn't think they could share with anybody.
Wow.
And also in like kind of a gentle way, sort of helping them learn how to talk about it. You know, when people talk about like their vulva, for instance, like they often say like down there or like vagina or whatever. And it's like kind of gentle psychoeducation sometimes too of, or I mean, even clarifying, because some people will say something like, I'm trying to think of like, oh, you know, like he finished. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Like what, like, you know, I know it seems obvious in some sense, but you really don't know. And then it will help me kind of describe what they were trying to tell me so that they could communicate that more clearly, and that it's okay to do that. Because I think a lot of people aren't used to just like saying the actual words about what's happening about sex. And that can be confusing because if somebody's saying a certain word and the other person is saying a word, but they're thinking totally different things of what it
Oh,
is, and like
leaves so much
you're
room for
already like not on
interpretation.
the same page, right? Like
Yeah.
you just, yeah, so
There's a lot of like misfire, miscommunication, or
yeah.
assumptions being made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important point too, is even as kids growing up, a lot of us um, weren't taught the correct
Mm-hmm.
anatomical names for parts of our bodies
Mm-hmm.
that are normal and we'll have them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to sugarcoat it, or we have to say something cute or silly or
Yeah, like it almost makes me think of like, you know how like Barbie like just has that nub or whatever. Like it's sort of like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just like, yeah, it kind of, we already have like kind of like a detachment from like parts of our bodies because like of how like society is like scared to talk about those things more directly, you know. um
and
and
these
like you
are
said, like it's related to like trauma work a lot of the times too, you know, like if you experience trauma you're going to feel like potentially detached from your body, and then even more so like in regards to sex, like because generally a lot of people can feel disconnected from like certain aspects of their bodies, you know, like their sexual organs, you know.
and I know as therapists, so much of our theories are based in how we can get disconnected from our feelings and our kind of psychological states.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have this like physical form
Mm-hmm.
that we walk around with and live
Mm-hmm.
with as well. And we can even get disconnected from that. That part can go into the shadow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
um yeah, what I've found, you know, starting this kind of specialty, like as I've been going along, is like a lot of it is, or you know, a big piece of it is mindfulness, because like having, you know, sex is being in your body, you know, and generally if you're walking around the world in the day to day and it's hard for you to be in your body, it's going to be hard for you to be in your body when like you're engaging in sex with somebody too, you know. So a lot of this stuff can overlap as well, you know. It's just for whatever reason, maybe because it's like a topic we don't tend to talk about, or we sort of like compartmentalize it or something. We think it's like very specific to sex, but and sometimes it is. I don't want to say it's not, but a lot of the times it's like, yeah, if we're really disconnected from ourselves or our senses or anything like that, like it's going to be hard to be present during sex. And on top of like whatever, like, oh, I'm feeling nervous, or like I'm not comfortable with how I look, or you know, I don't know what this person thinks of me. Um, that just adds to like a lot of anxiety, which means even more so you're not in your body, you
or
know.
disconnect, yeah.
Hmm.
Or you're old. It's really interesting. This is the third time I'm using this in our
Mm,
series of
mhm,
therapist meet and greets, but we're so much more than just like a peer.
mhm,
We get so caught up, all the thoughts, all the worries, all the concerns
mhm.
um, about day-to-day modern life. It's all in our head, our brains, but then
Yeah.
we have a whole rest of our body
Mhm.
that gets missed out on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And, a lot of the times how we perceive an issue, is kind of what leads to our distress I don't know if someone might come in and they feel like, they have a problem with porn.
Mhm.
And then you find out, oh, they watch it like, I don't know, once in a while, like once every week or
Mhm.
couple days.
Mhm.
But like for them, it's a problem because of how they perceive porn or what messages they've gotten about porn
Mhm.
versus like somebody who um doesn't have necessarily have an issue with porn. If they watch and they watch it every day, they're not distressed about it because they don't perceive it as like they're a bad person for watching it or they're doing something wrong or
Mhm.
whatever the perception is about that. um I don't have like an opinion one way or another. I don't feel like porn is inherently good or bad. It really is dependent on a lot of factors.
Mhm.
um
And what's
but
going to be distressing to some people is, well, I mean, you just said this, but what's distressing to one person isn't to
mhm.
another.
Yeah,
So
so like
it's relative.
how does one perceive themselves as like some people are like, oh, am I addicted to it? And it's like, well, the person who is not distressed and they're watching it every day and they're getting their work done and it's not intruding on their family personal life.
Mhm.
I mean, I would say like that's they're doing okay in a sense,
So that's not
versus
falling under an addiction sort of.
well, I mean, I think there's also a lot of um conversation now too of like that addiction isn't really like the right like it's not in regards to sex or sexuality. It's not really like kind of the appropriate way to describe that. And it's more of like because it can get really distracting, it makes us look at like sex or porn as like the problem when like that's usually like a symptom of something underneath that.
Yeah.
And so we kind of want to look at like the root issue to help them address whatever that problem is instead of like, in the addiction model, a lot of the focus is like, oh, you know, um, eliminating porn or, like it focuses a lot on the symptom and doesn't really
Like
get to the root
kind of like
part of
harm
it.
reduction, like reducing the whatever the symptom is, whatever however that shows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think the way that a lot of people like to kind of conceptualize it now is like out of control sexual behavior,
Mm.
versus like through the addiction model. But I mean, a lot of people use that term. And like I said, like how is somebody says I'm addicted to porn, and a lot of the times, like clinicians that don't have a lot of education about this aspect, they'll just believe the person, because they're kind of self-diagnosing that. And then like I said, like, okay, when you find out like, okay, how often you're watching it or what's going on with that, and it's like, oh, like once a week versus like, yeah, somebody who's watching it daily. How do you define what the like where's the addiction there? It maybe
It,
feels like they don't have control over it because there's some part of them that feels bad watching it and yet they go to it, you
mm,
know but is that really an addiction? And yeah, like I said, like if somebody came in and they felt like they were addicted to something, I would focus more on, well, how is it causing them distress, and like kind of getting more to the root of like, oftentimes sex or porn can be like a coping
mm,
tool and they just might be overutilizing it or something like that. Or again, like their value system and their behaviors are not aligning and that's causing them distress,
mm.
you know.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, it just, for me, it highlights how important it is to, if you're working with someone, on sex related issues, or even some body related
Mm.
concerns, or connection or disconnection, that having some additional training, some specialized training, so that you
Yeah.
know what sorts of questions to ask, how to expand on what clients mean by their concerns and
hmm
their behaviors and their symptoms. Um,
Yeah, I would say like it would be helpful. I mean, in my schooling, I guess I don't know. I think we had like maybe one class on human sexuality, and like I think it was like maybe even like one credit. So like it was very brief. It was like a summer class, and like that was it. And I don't even really remember very much of like what we talked about, to be honest.
I don't even
Um,
think I had
oh
a
yeah.
class. We had a couples therapy class,
Oh yeah. But
but
then
not
yeah, did you talk about sex? And
not that I remember.
in couples
Mhm.
in couples therapy, like it's just like so interesting how that doesn't even get addressed, even though that's like a big part of people's lives in a relationship, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think just even if somebody got some additional training just for their own comfort level, because I think, you know, like how I was saying earlier, clients might feel uncomfortable saying certain words, or you know, asking certain questions, or um, you know, I mean, therapists are people too, you know, and if we are uncomfortable with things like that, we're probably going to feel uncomfortable trying to address that with someone else, you know. So
So
it'll
with any other topic that we're working on with our clients,
mm,
we need to be doing our own work around
mhm.
um, our specialties, or things that come up with our clients.
Yeah.
We need to be at least self-reflective on what that means to us too.
hmm Yeah. Or, you
Mhm.
know, again, like, I mean, I don't want to say everybody has to do that, but if they find that it's very uncomfortable for them, or you know, or it's just
Mhm.
not an interest of theirs, that's okay as well. I think that would be the point where, like, you know, if this topic keeps coming up with their client or couple, then it would be good to refer out to a sex therapist, you
Mhm.
know, because it's like, you know, we can't be everything for everybody either, so I don't want to make it seem like, oh, you have to do all that.
Yeah.
But for anybody who is curious, you know, I think just doing like a basic training somewhere to kind of just even explore with yourself, I think could do a lot to help with that.
Okay. Do you, off the top of your head, do you know of any good trainings, like intro trainings, or institutes or training schools, I guess?
Well, the one that I'm connected to is called the Sexual Health Alliance. I really
Mhm.
enjoyed um, the training with them. They do like conferences virtually periodically, like
Yes.
every couple months, that have different topics. So yeah, I mean, kind of taking a look at like what might be coming up within the
Mhm.
next several months, like if there's a topic that seems interesting, that might be a good kind of intro spot potentially.
And those are geared towards therapists or other mental health.
Yeah,
Okay.
like sexuality educators, therapists, counselors, coach, I think even coaching too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So mhm.
I feel like there's the literal discussions and work around sex related issues, but you use the word libido earlier.
Mm,
And I just feel like libido is also much more than just related to sex.
mhm,
Like it's our life energy, it's
mhm.
life creating, it's energy, yeah, it's our creative work.
Yeah.
And I just wonder like how much of a ripple effect that has when you're working with clients on sex related issues, and how does that expand um, to these other
Yeah. I mean,
unconscious or other taboo uh,
um,
areas of life.
yeah, I mean, I think trying to like figure out how I want to like I had like a lot of thoughts happen at once, so I'm like, I don't know where to yeah, I mean, do you mean like how does that impact them like generally versus like just within their sex life or
Yeah, I just as I'm just reflecting that as I'm listening to you talk, it just I can only imagine like if you're doing like this focused work on like the actual sex
Mm,
therapy, but I don't know. I just feel like it could also have a ripple effect. I'm just imagining that it has this ripple effect on maybe people's I don't know, creativity,
mm,
their um
yeah.
desire for life.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's hard, I don't, because it's hard for me to like generalize that too, because there are people who identify as like asexual and things
right.
like that. So, or just some people just might not have interest, and that's okay too,
I'm
but
glad you brought that up. That's not something I was thinking about when I was saying that. I think that's something
yeah.
too, that you can be asexual and
Mm-hmm.
also have the creative urge for life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I guess maybe if you're talking about somebody who is distressed by that, like
Mhm.
they would like to have, like within themselves, they wish their libido was higher or something like that, but they can't access that, then yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things environmentally can really impact that. And just our own individual makeup, like some people are just more like sensitive, like their arousal, like,
Mhm.
just a little bit and they're like, boop,
Um, tap the gas a
other
little bit and
other people, yeah, I mean, and other people, it takes like easing into it. Um, and there's no like way, like I wouldn't try to think about, oh, how do I become the person that like easily, it's more of like, okay, the person that needs to like kind of ease into it, what are some of the things that like get them to feel more aroused or more turned on, things like that, and what are the things that like put like the brakes on or like stress them out, because if that's all going on in the environment, you could try to like turn yourself on all you want, but like if you're completely stressed out, like that's going to be hard to access that. So sometimes it's like even just noticing what is like causing you a lot of distress potentially, and trying to kind of minimize that to kind of create like the right environmental circumstances to like elicit that experience. I think that's the thing too, is like people want to they want to just be able to do it like we're machines, like, oh, just push a button and we're on, like but we don't have control over it that way, but we do have control over like noticing what can bring it on, or turn it down, and like adjust those things to kind of create the right environment for that to come up.
it sounds like a lot of the work is helping clients to become more self-aware about their
Mm,
capacities, their
hmm.
again, like what stresses them out and what helps them feel safe and comfortable.
Yeah, it's
And then to also recognize what is in their control, what they can change, what they have agency to change.
hmm.
And then maybe some, I don't know if acceptance is the right word, but some awareness of what is out of their control.
Yeah, and acceptance that like, what might work for you might not work for me,
Mhm.
like it's a lot of exploration of like things, like I said, like stuff even related to our senses that like, this is just like a random like, but like a type of scent that you might find really pleasing, I'd be like, ew, like I
Yeah.
don't like that. And
Mhm.
so if we try to do the same thing to elicit the same, it's not going to happen, because to me, I'm like, that does not please me at all. And you're like, that's really great. It makes me feel really calm, relaxed,
So like
whatever.
if I'm at Target and I'm smelling all the candles for the office and then I bring
Hmm.
it into the office and I'm like, oh, that smells great. And then you go and light it and you're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. I mean, and there's no like, how do we like, oh, how do I get to enjoy it the way that you do? Like, well,
Mhm.
I mean, I just find the ones that I find pleasing, not try to
Yeah.
like adjust myself to like your candle scents.
No, you don't have to light that
Like,
candle. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, or
Mhm.
just like, we put the candle to the side, and then when you're in the office, you light it, and then I light the one that like,
Or you say, hey,
works for
Ashley,
me.
can you find a candle that's not so musky or so florally or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or
Interesting.
communicating about it, right? Like,
Mhm.
actually I really like more like oceany salt kind of sense. Like, could
Mhm.
you maybe find one like that? And then you'd know like, oh, she really likes that. I could, that's part of the communication about
Mhm.
sex too, because like I said, like I might enjoy, you may not. And we can't assume that we're all gonna be into the same things.
And when you're working either with individuals or couples or relationships, do you ever kind of witness or experience people in a grief process when they maybe come to terms with or come to some acceptance that maybe they can't provide their partner with what their partner needs, or
Mm.
like if they can't find a middle ground or some compromise? Is that ever part of the process of sex therapy?
Yeah, I think it can be, because yeah, I mean, for some people it's like some people can compromise, or you know what their partner likes. It's not their favorite, but they're like fine. It's like, sure, I'll do that every once in a while kind of thing.
Mhm.
But if it's something they're just like really not into, and for the other person that's something they feel like they really have to have,
Mhm.
then they have to address that, whether that's is that a make or break thing for them, or is that aspect just not going to be a part of their sex lives together? Is
Mhm.
that something that you know is it something that like maybe that person engages in during like their own, like like solo sex or masturbation? I think there's still potential, but that's going to be up to the two of them, right? Like if it's
Mhm.
kind of like it could be a deal breaker for someone, and then there is grief with that. Yeah. I think sometimes this isn't like for every couple, but I think sometimes that has led to people kind of talking about different relationship styles and stuff like that too. There's a lot of like, I mean, there's more discussion now than like, I don't know, like maybe even like 10 years ago. At least in the therapeutic realm that I observe was like, ethical non-monogamy or polyamory. Like there's more talk about like those styles are
Mhm.
possible. But that might not feel right to those people either. It just
That
it could or it may not.
that's a whole different thing to negotiate and explore
Mhm.
and work
Mhm.
through. And that, um, you know, creating a different relationship constellation isn't just about sex either. There can be other
Mhm.
needs and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, fits that
Yeah,
need.
other like emotional needs, like different things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think I guess getting on that topic of it too, if you've been like in a monogamous relationship for a while and like somebody wants to like talk about that, I think spending time really communicating and discussing that and like determining what that may look like is going to be important. I see a lot of people just kind of like jump right into it because like maybe it's exciting, like and but then all this stuff kind of happens that they didn't talk about, and it's like, oh my god, like what's going on?
Some like
So
preemptive work that could be really helpful
mhm, mhm,
if a couple were
mhm.
considering.
And that would be something that like would you could come to a sex therapist to talk through that or negotiate through that as well, because that can be really tricky sometimes you
Mhm.
know
Good to know.
Mm.
All right, Jen, is there anything else about you or your practice that you want to share or let us
Mm,
know about?
yeah, I mean, I guess for me, the process to me is like we're collaborative. I'm never going to be like, oh, you have to do it this way, or things like that. There's some psychoeducation about things obviously, but I just want the relationship to feel like open, and where the person can feel comfortable to express like if something's working or not working. And I think what I've sort of found, I guess, over the years is that like I like to get to like the root of things, and I know that
Mhm.
that's really scary, and I don't expect that somebody is going to do that immediately, but yeah, if somebody wants to work with me and like that's what they're trying to get at, like I think that we would be a good fit because, there's like the day-to-day stuff and that is important, but sometimes there's like some real like root causes or issues that have been like going on for years. And I don't know, for me, it's really important to get to that for like kind of like long-term healing, and so I enjoy that work. And I guess I'm just putting that out there.
Mhm.
So
It's great that
people
you
know.
can make that space for people to go deeper,
Mhm.
um, of course, at their own pace, and
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
you and them working
Yeah, I'm not gonna
together
be
to
like,
figure
"No,
out.
we're gonna do it right now." Like, no.
Yeah. But for you and your clients to figure out what that means, in
Mhm.
your work together,
Mhm.
um, but just knowing that you can hold it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable with, I guess topics that like maybe people feel like, oh, I don't know if that's okay or safe to talk about. And, I've always been comfortable with that. And so I kind of invite people to kind of share all those things.
Mhm. It's great that that your clients or and future clients have space where, um, they can talk about these really important things,
Mhm.
um, be curious about the shame that comes up for them, and
Mhm.
hopefully the shame quiets and decreases over time.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes just like being witnessed in your shame can, that the experience of shame, being witnessed in that, and somebody is there supporting you can, kind of slowly bring that down. You don't have to like carry that on your own, you
um,
know.
it's the power of any kind of relationship.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
all right, Jen, you're on our website, so if anyone is wanting to consult with you or to work with you, um, in therapy or consultation work, they can find you on our website.
Mhm.
Uh, Jennifer's email address is jennifer@psychesomatherapy.com.
Mhm.
Um, and you can reach out to her if anyone out there is interested in learning more.
Yeah. Yeah, I would
Okay.
prefer email if possible. I know people like
Okay.
to call, but email. And then we can coordinate a time to set up for the consultation. That helps me like schedule it in. So
Yeah. Want to
yeah.
make sure there's time, set time to do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.